Hey, Henry, good to see you, man.
Can I have everyone's attention, please? Everyone's attention. Hey, if you guys want to talk, you guys can go outside and talk in the hallway. I'm going to ask the bartenders to stop serving for the next 5 minutes so we can at least get settled down here. But then again, hey, it's Monday, right? So welcome to another installment of Mobile Monday, Silicon Valley. My name is Mario Tapia. I'm president of Mobile Monday. I've been working. So how many people here the first time Mobile Monday? Wow. Ooh. How many people are in the imaging industry? Okay, cool. How many people here have Google Glass? Wow. Oh yeah, cool. So tonight's agenda, we'll have basically I have a couple of slides to go through about what is Mobile Monday for a lot of the newcomers. Also, we will have AOL. Thanks to AOL, this is their office, by the way. This is the Valley office. And we'll also have a keynote by Carolyn for ArcSoft to kind of give basically the State of the Union on intelligent imaging. And then we'll go into the panel discussion and follow up with networking. And I think for the networking, we still have a bunch of drink tickets left. So I think once we wrap up, I'll call up one of the guys with the tickets and see you guys want some more drinks. So about Mobile Monday, it's basically we're a nonprofit, and we also have a lot of U.S. cities. So we have Austin, Chicago, Silicon Beach, Silicon Valley, DC, but also we're all over the world. So about 140 plus cities around the world, and a lot of cities, just like tonight, are getting together and talking about a topic in the mobile industry. So I think that the latest tally is over 13,000 folks in our distribution channels. But roughly it's about a third product marketing, a third business development, and a third developers. And then we have some VCs and design. Okay, who's a designer here? Anybody does design? They're like unicorns. Yeah, once in a while. And then monthly meetups. So kind of like we're really busy. So if you look at it, so this is our monthly topic meeting. So this is where we get the entire ecosystem, from a couple of guys in a garage with an idea to Fortune 500 executive in the audience. We also do our Mobile Monday Labs, which is very technical focused. And last week, how many folks went to the one last week? And we were focused on, so we were doing HTML5 and looking at dev tools. And then we also have our executive dinners. But that's not us really eating, but it's kind of some people eating there. But that's more of a roundtable discussion. That's invite only. So all this stuff is done by sponsors. So if you guys are interested, you guys are interested in doing a topic like this, the meetup is awesome. If you guys are looking for engineers, the labs are awesome. But if you're also looking to just network with very high level founders, executives, the dinners are also a good event to sponsor. So how to find us? Go to www.mobilemonday.us. You'll find, and that will direct you to the meetup page for this event and for this group. You'll also find us at Momo SB, and then actually I have to update this one. So thanks to John Lynn. Where's John? Somewhere around here. Good. So we moved over to YouTube. so we have like 40 videos on YouTube now. So 40 different events, which is great. I think it goes back almost 4 years now. And it's kind of our team. So I'm Mario. Mike Chen is somewhere in Rome. Ryan is around here somewhere. Where's Ryan? Ryan should be here. We have Chelsea, you probably saw at the desk, as well as Monica. Corinne is not here, but she's always behind the scenes. She's basically our digital person. And then we have John, who also does all our video. So tonight, it's intelligent imaging. We'll have Yi from Orbius, we'll have John from ZTE, we have Oliver from NG Codec, and VJ from Aviary, it's hard to pronounce, Aviary, and then Caroline from ArcSoft. And also, here are some of the partners that we've had in the past, and we keep on, we have more supporters than we can fit on this slide. But then also a big thank you, and a bigger round of applause to ArcSoft and to AOL for so a little bit about tonight. We're looking at intelligent imaging and kind of like why is this important to me? Why is it relevant to mobile? So we'll look at it from a couple of perspectives. Basically the computer vision part of it, and that's really the intelligence in the cloud, intelligence on local software, intelligence in the silicon to help with all the heavy lifting of detection and things like that. We'll also look at applications and use cases, like how is this being used today. We'll talk about creepy apps and creepy scenarios that are actually live today. And also, with a little help from Oliver, we'll also get the latest on video codecs. And how many have heard of 4K ultra high definition? Wow, you've been to Costco lately, haven't you? So I was like, what's this 4K stuff over the holidays? So Oliver will kind of do a little deep dive, hopefully not too geeky to bore everybody, but more interesting than like, and then also we'll kind of look into, you know, what's too much resolution, right? At what point does the eye really doesn't really matter? So that's kind of what we'll chat about tonight. I would like to invite Josh up here to talk about AOL.
All right, so I'm just going to say a few words about who we are and then get out of the way and let you guys get on with the evening. So for us at AOL, we're thrilled to continue to be part of this, to provide the space and you know, for this event. For myself, so I'm Josh Levine. I head up mobile sales for AOL. I've been with the company about 3 months at this point. I'm a very recent addition. The question I get asked most is, wow, you guys are still around. I had no idea. I spent about 4.5 years at Yahoo, most recently, if there are any Yahoo folks in the room. I had a good time there. And a lot of the reason why I came over, you know, the mobile marketplace continues to grow. The stat I saw most recently was Gartner projected at the end of 2014 to be about an $18 billion business. We certainly ourselves have seen this massive shift of audience consuming content across our sites on mobile more than they ever have before. And as the space continues to gel, there's a lot of fragmentation out there from a marketing standpoint. I really fundamentally believe that we'll see a wave of consolidation over the next 12 to 18 months. AOL is actually in a really good spot relative to where the market is. And we're sort of focused on these three sort of areas. Premium content experiences, our cross-screen technology. We have a lot of users that still visit us on the PC, mobile, tablet. It's a good place to be. And then obviously we have a lot of great technology through the advertising.com acquisition we made 14 years ago or so. And so for us, along with a lot of other companies in the space, are really migrating at a very rapid pace towards a mobile-first view of the world. Because in 2 years' time, the PC industry will continue to be what it'll be, but mobile, from an audience standpoint, from a content consumption standpoint, most specifically, will be the way that a lot of us, a lot of our users, a lot of customers interact with brands, interact with content, interact with utility. And so, let me end on that note. I don't want to turn this into anything more than what it just was. Enjoy the rest of the evening, enjoy the panel, and thank you guys very much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Josh. Hey, Caroline, I'll set up for you.
Hey everybody. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so I'm Caroline Chen Spalding and I'm with ArcSoft. How many of you have heard of ArcSoft before? Show of hands. Whoa, really? Great. So for those of you who don't know about us, we've been around for 20 years now. We're in about 1 billion devices. We enable a lot of visual technologies, and that really spans a very large span of technologies. But what's really interesting to us is exactly the question we're exploring today, which is, what is the future of imaging? And you can't really ask about the future without asking about what we're doing today. Right? We're very visual people. We take a lot of photos. I'm just going to take a little show of hands. How many people have taken more than 10,000 photos in their life? Okay, keep it up if it's 100,000. 1 million. Dude, that's too many. But that's really the question, right? How many is too many? How much is too much? And that's really connected to a bigger question, which is, at some point you got to find them, right? So what is relevance? What is relevance in imaging, right? We all know Google, we have text, we know how to find stuff. But when it comes to images and video, it's a bit black hole today. So what is relevance for imaging? What does an image mean to you? What does an image mean to me? And how do companies with technology like ours actually make a difference? So here's a very simple example. So if you got married 100 years ago, maybe you care about the picture on the left. If you got married maybe last week, this is your picture. If you don't want to get married, you don't care about either one of those. So the true problem with imaging is that it depends on so much more than just what you see. And that's kind of the problem with the nut that we're trying to crack here, right? It's about the content. You know, if it's my grandma, I really care about the one on the left. If it's my wedding anniversary, I better care about the one on the right. But it's also about context, right? So when you're caring about the picture, who's caring about the picture or the pictures, if it's a video, if there's a specific use for it, right? So if you're starting a new business and you're trying to promote your restaurant, you probably know about Yelp, you probably need a picture, what picture you're going to use. So the problem with imaging is that there's a lot of issues with finding the right image, and they don't all have to do with the image itself. So really, imaging today, what it means is a huge puzzle, and it's a very difficult puzzle. Because with cameras, you know, with PCs, there's not a lot of information in the picture to start with, right? The EXIF data is almost gone. If you have smartphones, maybe there's location attached to a picture. Maybe you can know who took it, maybe if you were close to someone, but is that really the information that you need? Right? So that's what we're really excited about at ArcSoft, because we've been around for 20 years. If you've used a camera, if you've used a PC, if you've used a smartphone, there's a really, really very high chance that you've used our technology. And so what are the different approaches that companies like us are taking to try to crack the nut of what is imaging intelligence? One of the things that we're doing is facial recognition, facial detection. We're not NSA though. We don't really do anything with that information. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Perfect 365. It's a little app that we launched last year, 20 million downloads, almost 25 now. And the really interesting thing about facial detection is that it can be used today, sure, to apply makeup automatically, which I'm sure most of you are very enthusiastic about. But it can also be used on two-way, right? What if I'm able to know what your mood is based on the two-way camera that's on your smartphone? And based on that, determine whether or not I got the answer right when you were actually looking for an image. So there's mood detection, there's face detection, there's who it is. Of course, there's your pet facial detection if you really want to know where Rocky is today. But there's more than that. There's also, you know, there's the rest of our bodies, right? We're more than just a pretty face. So what about gesture? What about your hands? So what if you're able to not just command based on, you know, gestures we're all familiar with, like this one, or that one? What if, you know, gesture is all about your entire body, right? And at some point it becomes very cultural. So when you have issues of a gesture like this, depends on who you are and where you are and when you are, they mean different things. So what can we do with gesture recognition, combined maybe with other factors such as facial detection, to really understand what is in the frame and what it means to you? So finally, when you think about multiple images like that, or about gesture, you have to think about video, because it's now the interpretation of multiple frames in a row. So it's not only about content, it's not only about context, it's all about being able to do it in real time on video, which is super easy, right?
Yeah.
No problem. So we're really excited that we're just really at the infancy, right? So this is just what it could be today, right? There's interpretive gesture, if you want, analysis in a car, trying to understand what's about to happen before it happens, before you can even see it happen, right? Computers theoretically can analyze a situation much faster than you can, which means it can react much faster than you can. And so on that note, I just want to open the panel. I think it's going to be a really interesting one, given who we have, on what intelligent imaging is, not just in terms of analyzing the image, but what it is to us and how we interact with the world, right? So what's the road ahead, and are you ready? And if you want to learn more about our technologies, I encourage you to go just on our website at www.arcsoft.com, and we'll also have a demo table at the back. And can't wait to talk to my fellow panelists. Thank you.
All right, guys. Panelists, we're going to come up and take a seat. We'll do panelist introductions. So I guess Yi, we'll start with you and then work down the table.
Sure, my name is Yi. We are Warbius. We are offer integrated visual recognition solutions based in the cloud, which means our technology empower the computer to have the capability to recognize faces, scenes, objects, and logos all together in real time for images and videos.
Hello, I'm Oliver. I work at a small startup called NG Codec. It's a company I founded 18 months ago doing next generation video compression. For the longest part of my career, actually, I worked at ARM for almost 13 years running the mobile activities.
I'm Caroline. If you have a short-term memory problem, I work at ArcSoft. We're in 1 billion devices, and we power basically almost all of the imaging technology we use.
I'm Vijay Bachani. I work at Aviary. What we do is build mobile and web SDKs. We have iOS, Android SDKs for photo editing. We're in about 7,000 different apps and websites, and then we have our own consumer app. Not quite as big as ArcSoft's. we have about 20 million users on our iOS and Android mobile apps.
My name's John Lin. I'm with ZTE. We're probably around the 5th largest smartphone OEM in the world. Primarily 40% of our phones, I think, are sold out of China, and the rest probably white labeled under operator brands. So that's one reason why you may not have heard of us. We obviously get approached by a lot of solution providers around the digital imaging and video space, and have spoken with all these companies on this panel in one form or another.
Cool, thank you. So let's start off with an easy one. What is intelligent imaging? Right? And really, maybe, do you guys want a really technical discussion, or you want kind of like I'm new to imaging discussion? Who wants new to imaging?
Technical.
Who wants more technical? Okay, all right. So let's get down and dirty into the technical details. So from ArcSoft's perspective, give us, kind of drill down what is intelligent imaging, how are you guys dealing with it, and I think Yi also, you probably have some good stuff to throw in there.
Yeah, so we have a suite of technologies, so they're basically algorithm-based, right? So imaging technology is the ability to find the relevant information within a set of pixels that just look like dumb pixels and try to get the intelligence out of them, whether or not they like it. That includes ranges from scene detection to object detection, so we've powered everything in cameras. So what you're used to today, sunset detection, smell detection, face detection, all of that is probably powered by us. And we're moving into the realm in the last few years of multiple images, video. So for example, at CES, we announced the only home monitoring solution that can tell you if someone's home. So the ability to, in real time, analyze whether or not what's entering the scene is not just a plant or a car or your cat or your fish, but your husband. So that's basically translate into, useful information. It's algorithms to serve you and what's important to you.
So from my perspective of understanding about what is intelligent images, so in the history kind of level of this understanding, is more about like industry level, some of the manufacturer who use really intelligent images to kind of improve the quality of their parts, their products. Also in some biomedics industries, people use that like cancer scan. But the most the revolutionary intelligent images more for consumer products, for example like Google Maps, self-driving car, a lot of the old ones like zip code scanner, like the barcode scanner, and nowadays it's more and more directly coming to with a huge volume of data. So how the computer itself can automatically understand what is behind those images. For easy search abilities, for people to manually organize their data, how to easily find the relative things behind that. It is more to us like the image to text, how those things can happen intelligently, automatically in the back end.
So I'm curious to see how the whole process works. So if I say I'm an app developer and I go, I want to do facial recognition, some type of cool stuff, right? And leverage some of the APIs and services that both you guys have. So, and and maybe VJ, you can chime in and say, okay, so what goes into that? So I build an app, a user takes a photo, kind of help me go through that process of, does it get sent to the, does it get sent into the internet? Is it?
Should we start with like the lower level? Because actually a lot that happens on your phone before you actually have an image.
You want to look at the hardware? Start with the start with the metal, and then
I mean, as many people may know, sensors don't see in color. What they do is they have a filter that's a Bayer filter, and what you have to do then is take the raw data from the sensor and process it in a manner that actually turns it into a nice image. And so there's a lot of hardware in phones, typically called an image signaling processor, or ISP, that does a lot of things to improve the image and get the color. It talks about filtering, it talks about factoring that some of the pixels might be stuck. But all of that happens in your phone before you actually have an image.
Well,
and then the image gets presented.
Yeah, and the difficulty is that over the course of time, I mean, there's an optics, there's a physical problem, right, between where the lens is and where the sensor is, right? And the more that distance is shortened, the more problems that you're running into. And so while we're all wanting better and better photos, we also want thinner and thinner phones. And so that's where software has to kind of overcome some of the limitations that are the constraints that are getting harder and harder on the physical side.
Absolutely, but that is getting very challenging, because as you increase the megapixels, what happens is the pixels get smaller and smaller. As they get smaller and smaller, they collect less light, and so they become more noisy. And
if you use ArcSoft technology.
Well, that's why the panel, that's why people invent lots of great technology that mitigates some of the challenges. But there's a huge amount that goes on even before a JPEG is created, and then hand over to people that want to do JPEG.
Yeah, I just wanted to add from an OEM perspective. I mean, the way we take a look at digital imaging and video, certainly there is the image signal processor, which Oliver had referenced, the sensor, the optics. I'm sure you've seen some phones advertised, with Carl Zeiss lenses and such. So that's the basic hardware level, and then the next level that at least ZTE we look at in terms of the software layer before the user actually takes the photo is very basic things like autofocus, auto white balance, and auto contrast. And then on top of that is once you've got the image, to process it for like facial recognition or smile detection, etc. And then on top of that, the application layer where you have your Facebook or your Instagram, etc. So and all the different OEMs are trying to differentiate and improve the photo and video experience, because it is one of the major use cases of a smartphone these days. And so yeah, it's I think we're going to see a lot of exciting things in the coming years as more and more people are even more dependent on their smartphones for capturing photos and videos.
I was just going to add that there's a trend that we're beginning to see, that people are adding more analytics into the hardware layer, lower down. Because if you use face tracking, you can do it in software, but maybe you can track one person if you do it in software, and your battery will be challenged. Whereas if you put it in hardware, you can track maybe 20 people, and then you can also do more sophisticated analytics. So we begin to see more and more of the analytics moving into hardware where you can increase the performance.
It's also because now the CPUs and the GPUs are much bigger. I mean, it used to be you had a pretty dumb device in your hands, so trying to make it do anything would probably not do it or die.
Yep.
What I was going to say was that what we do is sort of between the facial recognition and the sharing. So it's how the user experiences the actual photo, and what we believe is that their experience with the photo has a lot to do with the emotion, right, that they're trying to express. And so we want to simplify all of that really complex processing down to sort of very intuitive tools and very intuitive gestures on the phone itself. And so, you asked earlier if it's sort of in the cloud and whatnot. That'll vary based on which technology you're using. What we do is all of the processors are downloaded onto the device, and then the user has a very intuitive interface to sort of play with those processors. And before they share it, we can do a bunch. This is sort of where the controversial comment might come in, but we can do a bunch of stuff automatically or automagically to a photo. But what the user is really going to enjoy is actually playing with the photo themselves. And so it's taking that really complicated technology, putting it into an interface that anyone can understand, and giving them ownership over what that photo looks like ultimately, that really drives the user engagement.
I think there's an evolution, right? Because our expectations of what our devices should do and what we want to do with them exceed the actual hardware, like always. It's always a race to the better. We always want more than what we can do, no matter how much we can do. So I think there used to be, if you wanted anything done, it had to be done on the server side because you had nothing on the device. Now our devices are smarter and smarter. They're more and more powerful, right? The computers inside of our smartphones are more and more powerful, and inside of our cameras as well, right? But what we want to do is still much more complex than what's possible on a portable, battery-powered device. So I think it's really interesting. You'll see like the most popular technologies will start on the server side, and with some latency and some give and take on bandwidth and all these issues. And then as soon as they get popular enough, and as the smartphones start catching up, you'll see part of it being offloaded on the device itself. But then we'll want something else that also. So I think it's always kind of like a relay between, and that's really what's interesting about the whole segmentation of the smartphone business is there's so many devices to support on so many carriers and so many diverse environments that the actual relay between the hardware and the server is an increasing challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like nowadays, the devices are getting smarter and smarter with the development of CPU and GPU, probably like APU together. But why we want to keep our technology in the cloud? Because we want to serve a more broad audience, where people always thinking computer vision scientists, they like study for several years, they start doing like visual recognition kind of things. Even like Google and Facebook recently got a lot of talent acquisition and so forth. But we do think, except for those big products, there are definitely a lot of areas where this technology can play a role in and increase user experience. And that's the reason why we want to like keep our technology in the cloud. We offer different package of SDK for like developers, easy to use. We have SDK for iOS, Android, even for Google Glass, PHP, all type of things. So that for some lightweighted customer, they can directly grab the things instead of hiring some PhDs, start from scratch. They can directly use our technology. And more sweet is by processing in the cloud. Actually, with nowadays the computer powers increase, people do not really feel the latencies. And also we are using like deep learning, like machine learning algorithm. The sweet part is by every time we process new images every day, our engine actually getting smarter and smarter. The accuracy is keep improving. And that thing kind of puts the whole industry to move forward, have better accuracy rather than we like doing customization for like one type of devices and we spend another 3 months for like customization for another devices, and not as a whole like pushing ours to be performed better. And one thing since we opened our API like August 2012, we do see the benefits because nowadays we're processing more than 3 million images every day, and our performance was keep increasing much better than some like hardware devices. And that is why we think for some type of task, it may good for hard devices, but the whole society kind of improving technology is better to have something in the cloud. Everybody can use that.
Well, I think it really depends on the particular use case. Obviously, you can do more in the cloud, but from my experience, I've had experience Yahoo Photos and Adobe that a lot of people, they take a lot of photos and then they don't do much with it, right? So it's a matter of on device trying to manage the photos or do basic photos editing on their particular device. So certainly having intelligence in the cloud and then processing the photos maybe on the device could be a use case that we see, or a lot of or automatically uploading photos to wherever your final master storage location is, or it could be a hybrid. It's still we kind of still live in a mixed photo video environment where we take some photos with our camera, more important photos, I think, such as events and ceremonies with a digital DSLR or even a still for optical zoom, etc. And then maybe for camcorder for like a wedding or something really special event. So yeah, I think you're going to have intelligence at all levels.
One of the things that we struggle with, and I'm curious to hear all your thoughts, is really offering that technology to the masses. So only a very small percentage of phones have, phones specifically have CPUs and GPUs that are advanced enough to process the types of things that we're asking them to do. And so what do we do with the rest of the world that wants to be creative, wants to take photos, wants to do interesting and unique things with facial recognition and all that, but with devices that aren't powerful enough? So we struggle with how we get really mass adoption without having cell phones to be able to do the things that we're asking them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the algorithm. I mean, if you talk about a face recognition algorithm that's fixing the focus and the metering, well, that's got to run in the phone, because if it doesn't get it right, your picture's out of focus. So there are some algorithms that have to run in real time and have to run as fast as possible in the phone. There are others that quite happily can run in the cloud.
Can I run all that stuff on say a Series 60? That's circa what, 2007?
Yeah, it actually can. The man over there may know. They may have had some hardware to do it back then. Or a fixed focus. It's probably, most of the older cameras were fixed focus.
Yeah, it's because probably a good majority of the world, still in emerging markets, have feature phones. And so they're not there. So a lot of stuff doesn't have to be leveraged in the cloud. I mean, just you can still do the face tagging and that Facebook does, right? And with the Motorola Razr.
I mean, if you don't have an autofocus camera, you have a fixed focus, you kind of solve that problem of having to focus on the subject.
So let's talk about cool applications. So what have you seen today that's been because we're going to talk about creepy after that. So don't talk about creepy yet. So let's look at something that's cool that you think that, hey, well, this is awesome, this is very cool, I like it. It's a good application of intelligent imaging. Do you have a favorite? Have you seen what have you seen in the marketplace? Start with E.
Yeah, if start with me, it's instead of saying something I saw and think really cool, and this is one thing we build, we think it's really cool for demo purpose only right now. It's more like the magic mirror, which we use a real-time face recognition kind of algorithm to give you recommendation, probably which angle is the most beautiful angle for you to take, especially for me, Asian girls, right? We do take a lot of Photoshop, and later on we can cover different user experience, right? I almost tried 10 different 10 minutes
the
finding
optimal selfie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have that already launched in Asia Pacific, and we receive high volumes because people also they want to decorate themselves with different cosmetics, different hairstyle. They want to check even before they step out to the social events. They want to know whether I look good today, or they want to decorate as a kind of celebrity they want to look like, and they decorate, follow the steps on the website, and then they check it out. This is very interesting, even though some people are talking about beauty score, kind of very sensitive score, but it definitely can use in a lot of ways. For example, for some cosmetics company or some more close environment, it helps people to compare it before whether you had makeup or after makeup. Probably both the age and beauty score will change. And also for some guys, I think they may like this feature, kind of such capability. You can solve through the potential dating. Yeah.
Which one do I look more macho in? What's
Probably for guys not that way, but if you go to some dating sites, you probably want some kind of premium feature. You can source through the candidate by how beautiful they're looking at as a secret feature.
Actually, it's really funny. About a year ago, we were analyzing what our most used tools were, and you could probably guess there were things like effects and tilt shift and color splash that you were seeing everywhere. In the last 6 months, I think the second or maybe even the most popular tool in our toolkit was blemish removal. And so you can actually see this emergence of selfies in the tool usage that we're getting. We're not a selfie.
The word of the year, right?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it actually came if we analyzed our Asian markets last year. the blemish removal tool was really popular there, and now it's in America too. So we're seeing these trends come
not
from...
just in Asia. I mean, Perfect 365 got 20 million downloads. Most of them are in the US. So I think we're on the same
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm mentioning that because a lot of people are talking about facial recognition, kind of like all think it's creepy stuff, like related to privacy. It's exactly not always that like that. Some like the fun features like beauty score, the age reader, kind of also the emotion tracking help the companies can engage with customer. A lot of like a lightweight application and software can be help people to like improve their user experience while like for their daily life. That is why, as we mentioned, we want people to be more creative, use such kind of technology, building something really cool and really fun, just to change their own life or a friend's life, to change their socialization with people.
Oliver, what have you seen lately?
So now I'm kind of a video guy, so it has to be a 4K TV, and not necessarily for 4K images, although 4K video, I think that is amazing when you see it. If you guys haven't seen it, go to Best Buy, look at the TVs.
Do they actually have demos? Like,
yeah, they do.
Show the 4K
They do.
stuff?
They have a Sony and they have Samsung and a few others. But you know, for those that don't know, a 4K TV is exactly 4 times the pixels of a 1080p. So it's 2160p, so 2160 by 1920, so exactly 4 times. But one of the cool applications I don't think people are talking about is still image. So if you do the maths, that's 8 million pixels. So any camera that takes that 8 million pixels, you can see 1 for 1 on a 4K TV, and it's going to look absolutely amazing. You know, typically if you look at a 1080p, you're doing a 4x subsampling, you're reducing the image quality by 4x. The other thing with these new TVs is they're actually having a wider gamut. Now that means that it can display a wider range of colors. They also have much higher brightness and much bigger dynamic range. And so when you put all of that together, you get an image experience which to me is just like going from standard F to HD. And that's why I think 4K is going to be huge.
I have a quick question on, okay, so all these are LED, right? So you go to the store, you see an LED, but
yeah.
How does that differ from the screens that I get on my mobile device?
So LED actually refers to the backlight. It doesn't refer to the actual transistors that are used to make the image. And basically there's fluorescent bulbs, which is the older style, and now there's LED. And the benefits of LED is that you can more localize, control the backlight, and so you get a wider dynamic range. But there's actually now a step beyond that that Dolby is promoting, and others, which Dolby calls Dolby Vision, which is a technology where you have, instead of just the backlight at the edges, you have it localized. And so by having the ability to control the backlight in 300 or so more localized areas, you can have much wider dynamic ranges. The images basically look a lot better. You get much darker blacks, much brighter highlights, and it looks like an HDR photo. And that's what your TV will do. So, you know, every TV that everyone has today actually shows only a third of the colors that our eyes can see. That's all that TVs today can show. The newer TVs will get closer to the reality. And if you don't believe me, look at strawberries. Strawberries do not look correct on TVs today because the red is outside of the gamut that today's TVs can display.
So how does that affect John, though? When John's shopping for a vendor for LCD, or not LCD screens, but the next generation of screens,
well,
what is he?
I mean, of course, component costs. I mean, a lot of our handsets are sold on the low to medium end, but on the high end, you know, obviously there's screens that we source from Sharp or Corning or well, the glass and then the LCD. One of the things that I did want to comment was that in terms of 4K, a lot of people are wondering what the content is going to be out there, but the smartphone will actually probably be the first generator of 4K content out there, because in your latest Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 series phones, they have the ability to capture and encode 4K video. And so from that aspect, your home movies, should you want to take them in 4K, are going to be in 4K, and you'll be able to view it on your TV. So from that perspective, you know, what you have in your hands in the next year, you're going to be able to really take the highest quality video out there. Of course, I mean, there are other things that matter, as I mentioned, in terms of the sensor itself and the optics, but that's, you know, I think really something that I think the OEMs are going to push, as well as certainly Qualcomm, since they're highlighting that feature quite a bit. One other thing that I did want to mention in terms of cool applications or hardware, since I'm speaking, that also at a event conference that I saw had attended, there was you know, a company providing a new sensor to be able to capture the distance in terms of light. So being able to take a photo and then basically, if you've ever used Photoshop, you know, have layers of images where if you have people in a row, you could literally, you know, not have to Photoshop each layer to separate the people, but basically composite an image so that this whole audience, I could remove the first row from the second row, from the third row to the fourth row, where distance is captured in each image pixel. And I think that will provide a lot of interesting aspects. One, I mean, probably better, I think, focus. I mean, it really reminded me of this company called Lightrope, which had a lot of press about it a year or two ago, where it's capturing all the light and distance and being able to refocus any photo after the fact, because it's capturing all the information. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of interesting feature, we've talked about you know, selfies. This past at CES, we launched or announced some new phones, and one of the features that we added in terms of image capture was, you know, when you're taking a selfie, it's kind of hard to like hold the balance and take the photo. So we added a voice recognition to be able to say, "Take photo," you know, and so that's like kind of a no-brainer when you think about it after the fact. That's a good idea, and I think we're going to definitely see that roll out in all phones in the future.
Well, I think Caroline, what's the cool app that you've seen?
I think I agree with both of them. I mean, what's really interesting is how much closer we're getting to the human experience, right? I mean, all of this is just another way to get us closer, right? Closer to what our eyes see, closer to what we interpret when we see something, right? We're not just optics, right? It's also what we think when we see somebody, right? If we see ourselves when we take our own photo. And I think what's really interesting is not just the fact that we're getting closer to the human experience, but also the fact that we're changing the human experience, right? Selfie is a word of the year. So what's really interesting to me as a photographer about that is that you used to be the victim of other people's photos. I'm sure we all have had that experience where your parents are taking a photo of you and you hate it, and they just want to show all their friends. That's the photo of you that's official forever, you know, that photo of you at 2 years old, probably eating something you shouldn't. Where I think there's a new generation of people now that are taking a lot more control, right? With the selfie, you're taking a photo of yourself, you're in full control of how people look at you. So even though, let's say there's at least 2 or 3 different types of lights in this room and it's pretty dark, I could take a picture of myself, process it with either Perfect 365 or the ArcSoft technology, gotta have a little plug in there, and then share it in a way that makes me look somewhat professional, right? So I don't look like, so my Facebook photo is the best, which is really the most important thing. But yeah, so I think what's really interesting is that we're moving back to where it used to be very showy imaging technology, right? HDR, where like scenes look like they're from Mars, all the way now to things that are invisible. The best technologies are the ones that you don't really notice anymore, right? You take a picture, you expect it to look good, or you expect it to look very close to what you see. And that is actually an incredible feat of technology. And what's really exciting is that we're getting closer and closer to that actual, you know, real time, what I see is what I get.
So I actually, one of the things that I was going to say when you first asked the question, John stole from me, which is the ability to capture the distance in images, because that's something that, as a photo editor, as a technology that's enabling photo editing, something that we're going to have to build for. But you know, a new answer is actually something that many of you are going to think are creepy, but I actually think it's cool, and it's how people are trying to start monetizing this sort of technology. So maybe not monetizing so much as using it for monetization. And what I mean by that is, we can start using recognition to say, it's a picture of a can of Coke, I want to go buy a can of Coke. Right? It's going to know, and I can click, and it's going to take me to Amazon, and I can buy it. But more than that is some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, which is you walk by a billboard, and there's a camera in the billboard, and it'll see your face, it'll know who you are, and it'll retarget to you. So some stuff that actually is quite creepy, but actually personalizing your experience as you walk down the street, to me, is pretty interesting.
That use case is actually live in the UK at Tesco, a gas station. They actually do have now cameras in London that are looking at people's faces and figuring out what demographic, male, female, what age group, and serving different video ads depending on who they recognize.
I was really curious about that because I'm always such a fascinated case of not being a female. So if you were just to take my face and try to figure out, maybe you'd show me kittens or something. And here I am, I'm a competitive sailor, I love the USC. How do you get from just seeing a face and being able to target it's all about relevance, right? Like you show me a pink skirt or a kitty and I'll just move on.
Well, I think it's actually going to get to targeting you specifically. So it'll find your face.
That's creepy.
Yeah. It'll find your face. It'll match it to your face on Facebook. It'll know, the things you like on Facebook. It might be able to go look at, your Amazon history. We all know about cookie tracking and that kind of thing. And then it'll retarget. The same way that Amazon retargets to you when you go read the Huffington Post. It'll start retargeting you when you're walking down.
Caroline, you'll see it working when laser 2s are provided to you now.
That's when you know it's working.
Yeah. This is so Minority Report. What was that? 2001, 2002, that movie? But that's actually now happening.
Yeah, exactly. As for us, we also have several partners who do the similar thing, kind of direct the interactive contents based on who you are. But one more interesting we figure out is not only to faces. Faces just to a certain level of understanding, as what Caroline just mentioned. The other thing we figure out is pretty interesting by understand what people's daily lives are. For example, like concept recognition or object and things. For example, for me, on my Facebook, I'm always every day uploading my food photos. Everywhere I go, I take pictures of the food kind of thing. It's more like the gallery of all kinds of delicious food on my Facebook. It's better to get understanding not only from my personal perspective, but also like what things I'm more interested in. Whether I'm always taking photos on the seashore, like hanging out with friends, or I'm a type of person always hang out in the bars, like dancing there. It's actually more and more targeting and information can be delivered based on both face, who you are, some geography, like how old are you, Asian or like female, male kind of thing, but also some like data we were gathering from the everyday life. For some of the pictures on your phones, or some pictures shared on the social networks, for example, your Pinterest channel. By the time we know what your interest is, it's better more targeting to deliver certain contents.
Yeah, and these phones, we all have more and more sensors, so you know the location, you know the time. In the future you could know, with accelerometer, whether or not you're driving to and from, Google Calendar. I think Google with Google Plus and trying to build more intelligence into,
Exactly.
Auto Awesome, or I think that's the future, trying to provide more context to the photo or video outside the image. It's just going to be, I think the holy grail, at least for me, for personal use, would be to able to auto-categorize and index all my photos without having to, do anything, right? No one loves sorting their photos or organizing them or backing them up, and to have all that intelligence to be able to do all of that automatically is, I think, happening in the future.
It's pretty cool. You can try to imagine if you are able to sort through tens of thousands of your photos on your phone and easily pull up every photo of your adorable dog and show it to your friends, or by some concept recognition on top of that, you can easily just by a swipe of finger pull up those photos with your dog on a Sunday walking in a park. It's more instant arrangement of those information you had. Yeah, it helps a lot when people survive from the huge number of multimedia contents.
So let's talk about creepy. So there would be a nice app. I'd love, okay, so if this was a world of glass or wearables, so everyone had Oliver's next generation of.
I've already got it.
He's already got them. He's wearing them. So, but if we were all wearing glasses, then we could walk up to somebody and it's like, hey, ye, basically, because a lot of times at social networking events, we don't know who's that person in front of me. Who did I just walk to? So, in this environment, would that be creepy to everybody?
I love that.
Well, or how many people would love that idea, right? So you show up and I can rent you some glasses and you guys can wear it and you guys can see each other and kind of know who everyone is. So that would be cool, right?
As long as the glasses look cool. I'm sorry, the ones today I'm not wearing.
No, they're going to look like those 3D glasses that you got at the movie theater. But then, how about then you're at the mall and then their sales associates are wearing the glass and they're going, hey, Bob, what's going on? And you don't even know who this person is.
No, he's got the contact. He's upgraded.
Yeah. So
he's wearing contacts that do the same thing.
So how would that be creepy to everybody? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about creepy. What have you seen lately that's kind of like, wow, that's a little bit beyond my comfort for privacy?
Wow, it's getting personal. My personal privacy. No, I think it's all, you've identified the core of the problem, right? Which is it's context dependent.
Yeah.
In this room right now, just with these people for a limited amount of time, as soon as we get out, I don't know you, that's fine. But it's really, you don't really need futuristic wearables to get to that point. Just with smartphones and all of tracking capabilities on what you're doing every day, you know a lot about somebody. But it's always the balance. What is the balance of what you're willing to give to any company in terms of data about you versus what you're going to get? Would it be really cool if somebody knew that I was about to get really sick and give me medicine to my door by the time I've got the fever? That would be awesome. Am I willing to let anybody know all of that about me? Hell no. So what's really interesting, I think, is that the balance of how much we're willing to give in order to get more is increasing.
Or the target use case where someone was pregnant. And I was like, that was not creepy. And then
That's hella creepy.
I'm not creepy. I'm not pregnant. And then she's like, oh, but yes, I am.
I don't know. I think in this day and age, if you put something on the internet, then people can discover it. So.
Well, if you're using a device that is internet enabled, which is pretty much everything, including your car, you're cool with somebody knowing about that.
If I choose, I should have the option to opt in.
In the U.S. somewhere where you can't use the device unless you sign it.
But I think okay, who doesn't have a Facebook account in this room?
Wow.
I think Joe was gonna.
Yeah, I knew that too.
So there's a couple of people, and I know probably there's a really good reason why. For the rest of us, I think if you read the terms of service at Facebook, we've basically given up a lot of our privacy, a lot of our biometric information, and other personal
Google's
stuff.
just as bad.
And Google probably did just as bad, right?
I'm sure they're going to say it's worse.
With Picasa and all the image stuff. But then I think Flickr, though, Flickr has a little interesting terms of service. If you
actually read it.
Yeah, I think you kind of have the ownership. You really can't divulge because if you're a professional photographer.
So most of the stuff doesn't creep me out at all, right? I don't care if someone knows I'm going to get sick. What creeps me out is, with facial recognition and things that are coming out now, when they can detect my mood. So there's some things that if Google Glass got good enough to know if I was happy or sad, even if I was trying to be one or the other, that's when it would.
No, there's a wearable for that. Changes color.
What about detecting if you're lying?
A real.
You could see a real app where you can tell by micro expressions if someone's lying. Is that going too far?
Not if you work at the police station.
Or some situation, probably your Google Glass recognize you as a Facebook friend and pull all your timeline events, and then you started talking with a new person, hiding up something, say, okay, I didn't reply you because last week I went to friends, some blah blah, anything, but the person instantly recognize who you are and pull all your life events on different social networks and keep tracking. Oh, you're lying to me. You actually have birthday party with Amy yesterday. So that's kind of creepy by recognize who you are, but more connecting with the social information around. Yeah.
I think if you opt in, I think that's the option. Everyone should have the option to opt in. If you opt in...
But opt into what? you're going to use my information, but I can't predict what it's going to be used for a month or 2 months or 2 years or 5 years from now, right? That's the issue is I have a lot of imagination and it could be used for the greatest thing or the worst thing.
I think you either give the information or you don't. I think that's the simple. You either let.
That's like writing a blank check. Here's a blank check. Maybe you'll write.
But there's also, I mean, on the, if you're wearing glass, obviously, if I'm wearing glass, I'm seeing everybody in here. So the people in the audience wouldn't necessarily be opting in. So, you know, there have been stories about people trying to, you know, wear makeup or change their faces, or certainly I know people actually not putting a photo on Facebook for their profile photo because that's how Facebook is going to recognize and tag your all of your photos. So are we all going to be around wearing anonymous face masks?
Probably against the terms of service of Facebook, I'm guessing. Not yet, but it might be in the future.
Put a cat photo, you'll be safe.
So I wanted to close the discussion a little bit on video because I think Oliver gave us a really good background. But let's talk about how many megapixels is too much. At what point is it like, wow, that, because I've already seen the 4K stuff. It looks a little off. It doesn't. I wasn't used to it, and it looks like it's skipping a few frames. It just looks a little odd.
So that answer really depends about what are you doing with the image. I mean, if you're printing a tiny little image, then, you know, probably 1 million pixels is fine. If you want to print a massive image, or if you want to have something very, very lifelike.
Sure.
But the key with 4K is that, you know, it's to do with the size of the screen and the distance. So if you have a very small screen, very small TV, and you sit a long way away, you won't see any difference. You might as well just buy a standard FTV, depending on how small your screen is and how far away. As you get closer to the screen, or as the screen gets bigger, then resolution really matters. And what people really want is the immersive experience, where you have a very big screen, ideally the whole wall, and so you see images that are life-size, and at that you're very, very close, and you need a lot of resolution. So the Japanese are actually pushing for 8K. They feel 4K is not good enough, and that's 4 times bigger.
And what's that? Going to be a screen this size, right? Every home is going to have a screen this big, right?
I believe
this is the future.
Actually, I think that's. I mean, Sony at CES at their keynote, they showed what they call a short throw projector. It's a projector that's about 1 foot from the screen. They put up, I believe from memory, 168-inch 4K image. Now it's $30,000 to $40,000 right now, but in 10 years' time, yeah, people will buy that, and they will dedicate a whole wall as their screen, and you will look at content, and I think the ultimate goal is that you can't tell that it's video. It's just looking like a window, and we will get there. But how many pixels? Probably 16K is going to be required.
Is it going to be like Back to the Future? Remember Back to the Future 3? He goes and they have the screen and they change that.
Yeah, I mean, that is going to come. Within, you know, 20 years, I think we will be there.
Cool. So I wanted to go, Vijay had some good questions. I wanted to cover some of those. And more about, so how do we look at, you know, complex technology and make it adoptable for the masses? So we're looking at, I think, at Orbius, everything's in the cloud. People submit basically post-process images, videos, etc. And then I think on our kind of the ArcSoft solution is a mix of both. For some solutions, you can do it locally and also send out to the cloud. And Vijay, I think you guys do something very similar to that as well. So what is essentially how are we going to make this mainstream? I mean, is it just through the applications that that you're exposed to on a daily basis, or basically how is the audience or the general public going to be exposed to a lot of these different technologies, and then and also you know, how are they going to get also access to the gesture recognition? So what does that future look like?
Yeah, I touched on some of this stuff earlier when I was talking, but that's one of the things we struggle with. Right? It's taking relatively complex things and putting them down to a format and a function that is usable and is digestible for the masses, right? People that might not have ever experienced image editing, people that might not have ever experienced recognition, and trying to make the interface really intuitive. So I don't have an answer for that, but we do things like for people in emerging markets, right? We might downsize the image on the device and have the user edit on a downsized image, so it happens more instantaneously, and then once they hit save, it'll then shoot it back, and we'll do the rest of the processing on the cloud when they can take 30 seconds or a minute to do it. So we do things like that to try to make some of this processing more accessible. But it's something that we definitely struggle with. Where we built a product for the U.S. and for developed markets, and how do we and our processing and our technology isn't even that complex. So I'm curious, people like Orbius, what do you do to try to get folks that aren't used to that sort of technology and might not have all the processing available to handle it? How do you deal with that?
So in current state, we're still improving the user experiences, especially for developers, how they're getting easier and easier to adopt our technology. Current status, we're more use a standard solution. We offer RESTful API, which is a pretty standard format. A lot of developers can easily start using that. And also we give different wrappers for iOS SDK, Android SDK, PHP, and even Google+. And in the meanwhile, we also build some demonstration applications and then draw some people's interest level. And after that, we also open all the source code in GitHub, so people can start from learning step by step how the application level thing integrate with the API kind of thing. We have some tutorials, very good, well documented, API document. It's currently what we do, and definitely a lot of things can be done, and we need to improve it and more get engaged with people.
Yeah, I think you've hit on the point, right? So if you only do server side, you're limited by what the device can do. So I think that's an advantage we've seen. ArcSoft works at the chip level. So when you go all the way down the middle, and you're optimizing from the chip, from the capture moment, where you have full control at the capture moment and really optimize for that particular device, right? How all the parts interact with each other, then you have a chance of having the best experience from the start, right? Because otherwise you're just handed something and then you're trying to make the best out of it. Whereas if you're starting from the captured time, you have first an opportunity at the capture level, right, with great manufacturers to work with them on optimizing that experience before you pass it on to the server for the maximum supercomputer experience, and then come back down. But you don't really have a choice. You either have an approach where you're doing the best with what you have, or you work all the way back up and really try to look at technologies you can improve on every possible array of devices, from the chip all the way back to the server.
I'd just like to add, at the end, you really need to think about who your target user is in the user experience. When I was at Adobe, everybody was asking me for, employee discount copies of Photoshop. And it's really, do you want Photoshop? Do you know how complex Photoshop is? And so I would say, how about Photoshop Elements, which, was kind of the prosumer, consumer version, which was a simplified menu, less features. Obviously, it wasn't going to cannibalize Photoshop. But for most people out there, Photoshop Elements was way more than they needed. They only thought of Photoshop because of the brand. But really, Photoshop is a professional's tool. And then when I was at Yahoo Photos, that was a very, very mainstream service where people basically just upload to albums and then ordered prints. So really think about the user flow and what your audience is around there. I think that's one of the reasons why and Instagram is popular, because of it does what people want to do and very easily. So.
Yeah, on that note, one of the things that we do to get it out to the masses is sometimes introduce photo editing in an experience where you might not be used to seeing it. So photos are now ubiquitous. You can use it for commerce, you use it for messaging, you use it for content. Really, everywhere you go, you'll see photos. And so the reason we built an SDK and we were founded on that is now you can easily get that sort of technology in all of those places. So if you're selling an item, you can quickly edit that image before you post it on eBay or what have you. If you're if you're messaging something to your friend, you can take a picture and edit it very quickly before you send it. So what we're trying to do is consolidate all the experiences, so really all the people that might not even think to use this sort of technology can actually get access to it really anywhere they go.
Cool. I have one glass question left. And that's more about what is kind of the future of glass. I know right now it's a novelty. I have a pair, I had a pair for a month, and I'm still trying to figure it out. They won't let me wear it in the house. So kind of what is the future evolution of glass? I mean, how is that going to really impact intelligent imaging? Because I think we kind of already know today kind of where that's going to go, but you know, all of you probably have thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic. I just think that it's right now most people, normal people, won't wear something that looks that ugly. If you can bury it into a regular pair of glasses and you can't tell, absolutely. But we're a way off from getting to that.
How about if I flip it over and it's in your car? So now your car, because like Honda's got like 8 cameras in the car.
Yeah.
If you guys remember that, it's like
Sleep
there's cameras
detection
all
is,
over the place.
Well, I think all new cars are going to
Yeah.
have a camera for sleep detection. If your eyes shut, it will wake you up.
Yeah.
Or distraction, because that already exists, right? The fact that you're not looking where you should be. Let's say you're looking down at something
Yeah.
instead of looking in front of you.
Or a heads-up display on the windscreen.
Yeah, and also some customized solutions based on profiling who you are. If you are the driver, like the main driver, will customize with the temperature, music, and all different settings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, my opinion on glass is that if it is successful, it's going to take off in vertical markets in terms of field sales, field service, things like that.
yeah, I could see early on, so I used to be an aerospace engineer a long time ago, and I could definitely see crawling inside a wing, and I don't want to crawl outside to get the manual. I could already see Air Force and stuff like that using that type of hardware. Not per se the Google solution, but some type of solution that easily brings up data when you're maybe in a confined space or you're multitasking.
And I think we'd all agree that the form factor as it exists today probably isn't ideal, as we all admit. And maybe if it was embedded in a normal pair of glasses, but we're not going to let go of the technology, right? It's going to exist. We're going to make it succeed, and there's obviously all these vertical integrations that'll have pretty incredible use cases that I think are really going to be the drivers of that success.
Cool. Well, I want to open it up to Q&A. Okay, you guys ready for the audience? Okay, who has a question from the audience? Okay, just state your name and the question, not a statement, question.
Anil Gurti from Samsung, Android engineer. What metadata can we extract from the device, camera, and sensors that can make us power intelligent apps or solutions from the devices? Because it could be, even doing simple things like searching for photos is a mighty challenge on the devices.
That's up to you guys. As you know, I don't need to tell you at least, that EXIF data is not standardized. that's the biggest problem. So there's no standardization, and therefore all the fields are in different places, and whatever you want to put is unreadable to 99% of applications. So some of it has to do, I think there's a lot we could do from an outside metadata, right, the data around the image taking. That would be very useful to many applications, who's in it, where it is, all that stuff. But who's going to do that and how are we going to standardize it needs to happen before we can do anything with it.
And just to add, there's an opportunity here because the new video standard H.265 actually has a still profile. It's called main still profile, which is twice as efficient as JPEG. And that's why the video guys defined it, and now the JPEG guys are running with it. But there's now an opportunity maybe to standardize that metadata as we come up with a replacement for JPEG.
Hi, I'm Roger, and I wanted to ask about the 4K discussion that you had before. 3D for consumer personal devices didn't really take off. Is there a risk that 4K will go the same route?
Of course there's a risk, but I personally don't think so. I think, again, most consumers didn't want to have to wear glasses, and the technology where you didn't wear glasses didn't really work so well. I think if you go into a retailer and look at a 4K TV with some good 4K content, to me it is a wow factor. And so that's why I think it will take off. The other factor is that the costs are not very large for the manufacturers. It's really, when they make the glass, it's not that much more expensive. It's just the driver electronics. So I think the combination of it having a wow factor and it won't necessarily cost that much more. You can already buy a 50-inch 4K TV from Vizio for under $1,000 today.
And I think one of the points that you made too earlier was that one of the problems with 3D TVs is that it forced people into capturing in 3D. So there was all this content that you couldn't reuse that had to be remade from scratch. And that's a huge amount of cost for a lot of people, right? So it's a problem of the chicken or the egg of like, is the content appealing enough? Is there enough of it?
Yep.
And is there enough demand to create the content that people might want to pay for versus, you know, making something closer to the eye where you may not have to upgrade everything in order for it to work?
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, any professional content today, whether it's a movie or a high-end TV show, is being shot in 4K already.
I mean, I think the real challenge, though, is the transmission of that data in terms of satellite or cable or over the internet. And it's, the bandwidth issue. And certainly you're not going to stream 4K over your wireless connection, even if you do have LTE. So
you could maybe, like, if it's like this big.
So that's where the new compression standard that my company's working on, H.265 or HEVC, comes in. So at CES, Netflix publicly said that they will stream 4K shows at 16 megabits a second and at 12. And that's 4K at 24 frames a second. And that's obviously, you know, significantly less, half the bit rate or more of if they had used the older H.264.
Yes, John Ostrom. My question is, you know, one size isn't going to fit everything, so I'm interested about machine learning. To what degree machine learning is going to have to be integrated in these systems? Is it going to be supervised, unsupervised, individual, you know, learning, or more generic learning, that sort of thing?
So you want to know a little bit more about how the backend things work, supervised or unsupervised
And
things?
just how important you think it will be.
Sorry?
How important do you think that'll be?
Okay, yeah, so for technology-wise, we use both supervised and unsupervised technology to improve our accuracy, and it works pretty good. And I think algorithm-wise, there's some importance level. We made a lot of tricks and things to improve accuracy, but one more important thing that which benefits a lot is the data itself. We by tuning and receiving more and more data, both we get benefit for both supervised and unsupervised. So that's keep our accuracy improving, which is really important to us.
I think machine learning is the way to go, but it's like the last mile, right? In Comcast or AT&T, the last mile is a limiting factor. I don't think you'll ever be able to get away with never supervising it. It's impossible. Our intents change, what we need, what we want. You need a human interaction to know that.
Exactly. I mean, the process is more like how baby learn the word. Like first step, probably from some supervised information. The mom tell him, this is a TV, this is a person, this is a phone, kind of thing. But by telling and engaging with certain level of information, then the baby have the capability to learn and to expand his knowledge. And then later on, even when new type of TV came out or new type of phone came out, the baby still can recognize it is a phone. That is the difference. Like the first initial steps, we need some supervised thing to input and to extract some of the key features, let the computer know what is that. And later on, it is more like unsupervised technology, which is keep improving the knowledge base as well as accuracy when like encounter with more and more new things in the daily life.
3D pictures using phone never took off. STC had a very nice Android phone that you could take 3D pictures. Do you see 3D pictures coming back, perhaps in, or maybe they're back in Asian markets, or is there more interest in them, or is it completely dead and we're not going to see 3D pictures at all?
So I mean, to do 3D pictures in the traditional way, you need two sensors, and that adds a lot of cost. But there are some newer sensors that John talked about that are capturing depth. There's a startup here in the Valley called Pelican Imaging that has an array of 16 4x4 sensors. And one of the byproducts of these new sensors is they can also capture 3G. So I think the traditional approach of putting two traditional sensors, I don't see that happening. But some of these new sensors that do depth, they will also do 3D.
Yeah, I don't think it's the what, I think it's the how, right? So it's all about how far we can go into lighting algorithms, right? Predicting where the light angle and how the cheapest way possible to do that in order to predict what a 3D object would look like out of a 2D object, right? Depending on how the light is hitting the sensor. If you get the angle, I mean, that's the Litro thing, right? They do it with 2 sensors, but as you said, if you can do it with 1, in software you get a similar or hopefully the same eventual result without the cost.
Yeah, Pelican was actually the company I was thinking about that I saw the demo at the Qualcomm conference. But I think essentially, yeah, from OEM's perspective, where it's, you know, the cost gets affordable, it might become a natural default, and whether or not users adopt it, of course, is going to be, we're just going to have to see. I mean, at CES, I did see, you know, Ultra 3D without glasses, and because of the increased resolution, I was actually kind of impressed with the quality, but at least with 3D video without glasses, I was watching some movie, I forget, the latest Ang Lee one where they're on the ocean, and I actually got motion sickness. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know about 3D video, but maybe 3D photos could eventually take off, especially if in the future, in 20 years, where we do have huge screens all over the place, that could be truly immersive, but you know, we'll see.
Hi, my name is Perry, and I have a question about the 4K commercialization in the mobile side. And as John Lin mentioned, that Qualcomm introduced the 4K video solution already, but you know, there might be a network burden because of more bigger image size. So, do you think 4K can be implemented and serviced on LTE or even after 5G or something? What's the prospect?
Yeah, so let me take this. I mean, right now Qualcomm has 4K in their latest chipsets. I think it's the Snapdragon 805,
yeah, 805.
But it uses the older H.264 technology. So if you actually record 4K with that, with one of the 2 phones that uses that particular chipset, the bit rate is around 50 megabits per second, which is almost too high to be practical. Your flash is consumed incredibly rapidly, moving the files, even transferring them on USB 3 is painful. So in our view, and I think in the view of CES, anyone that's really going to deploy 4K is going to use H.265 or HEVC that can half or even more, because you get better compression efficiency with larger resolutions. So I think 4K will absolutely happen, but people like Netflix and others will use H.265, which I'm sure will be in a Qualcomm chip soon, but it's not there quite today.
In terms of actually recording video to local storage, I mean, I think the use case instead of streaming would be, you know, storing to record memories for your own personal use. I mean, storage. At a different conference, you know, they're talking about, I think, either Samsung or SanDisk. I mean, right now, phones are coming up with, you know, 16 gigabytes to 32. I mean, in another year or two, you know, 128, you know, gigabytes of storage on your phone is not inconceivable. And then a couple years out, half a terabyte. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think, but, you know, Moore's Law is still marching along, so.
Remember, 50 megabits a second. You know, a gigabyte lasts very, very quickly. You know, I could do the maths, but it's, you know, 16 gigabytes will give you some small amount of minutes.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up. Panelists will stay on. We'll be around, right? That's more questions. We're good here for another 45 minutes. I think we have their tickets still up at the front desk if you guys want more drinks. And I guess we'll give a hand of applause to the panel. Also, special thanks to ArcSoft and AOL for making tonight happen. And we will see you. We'll see you soon. Thank you.